Aha! It is Wednesday, November 1. And, yep. Oh, hi. There's people in chat. Yes, happy November. I hope so. But, yeah, the day after Halloween, All Souls Day, Day of the Dead, all sorts of things happening here. Samhain, the, major event in some calendar, I should say it. Pagan doesn't sound right, but I guess that's right. So I hope that Halloween, those of you who celebrate Halloween in one fashion or another, went well for you. It did here. We had a lot of trick-or-treaters. There seems to be... it's a major celebration. These last 2 days are, a major event in a lot of ways for a lot of different cultures and religions. So, we had a lot of trick-or-treaters. It seems to go in waves in our neighborhood, like every 15 years or something, all the kids, there's a whole ton of kids, right? Like dozens and dozens, and then they all grow up and move away, and then their families downsize and sell to younger people who have kids, and we're in a wave of a lot of kids, especially little ones, like under 5 years old. It was kind of fun. There were a lot of them out, and it was especially, cool because it was snowing. It was like 37 degrees and snowing, and these little kids are just running through the slush and the cold weather, getting their candy. So it was, they're brave families. The parents seemed to be in pretty good spirits too. Considering that the weather was very much inclement. Just say it was really not very nice. Although in this area, I'd say about half the time it's raining on Halloween. Well, I'll explain that in a minute. Yeah, being old. Yes, old. Halloween, last night, lots of kids, gave out candy. It was fun. But here where we are, about half of the time it rains on Halloween, and sometimes it just pours so much that the kids can't get out at all. But the snow wasn't bad. They got damp, but not like a downpour. Anyway, got through that, and I'll give you little anecdotes. They're really one of the upsides of going to a Catholic grade school taught by nuns. Did that. Yep. But one of the upsides of going to a Catholic grade school, maybe the biggest upside, is that the day after Halloween is All Souls Day. And All Souls Day is a holy day of obligation. And a holy day of obligation means you need to go to church, but there's no school that day. So growing up, we always had the day after Halloween as a day off of school, which was really pretty cool. And sometimes after, it felt like we were staying up late, even though we really weren't. Trick-or-treating. It started right after dinner at sunset, probably like about 6:30 or something, and we finished up by 8 or 9, but it seemed like it went on forever. And so, dragging ourselves to church the next morning, and it felt like we were, and just, coming home after that and had the whole day off, which was pretty cool. Well, why are there centaurs here when it is Submarine Wednesday? There are centaurs here because I didn't put them away after Monday, and they were still sitting here. So I'll show you those. I'm working on these. I'll be working on them again on Friday. This one is nearly done, except that I need to use some speed paint on the parts that are ivory colored. It's 2 coats of ivory. So if you watched on Monday, you saw me go, the speed paint does not work on the gray primer at all. I need to give it a bright a lighter undercoat, and so that's the lighter undercoat. There it is. And then I also did a base coat on the other Centaur, and there's a lot of touch-up. You can see where I got the ivory paint on just everything, everywhere. Made a mess of it. Somehow this line back here didn't go right. It's kind of wiggly, so I'll have to fix that. But again, on Friday, I'll be getting back to the Centaurs. I'll be doing a lot of touch-up on this one with every color that's on there. Every color that either touches the ivory or even doesn't, because I bumped the brush onto various things. I'm going to put a dark gray wash on the horse, so this is going to be much darker. It's not going to be light like this. It's going to be much darker. And then do the speed paint on this Centaur as well, and hopefully it will look okay when it's done, and then we'll have 2 completed Centaurs. And there's a third one somewhere that Nicole did, and I can't find it. It was supposed to be the one I was supposed to copy, but I couldn't copy it because I don't know where it is. So, sometimes that happens. You can't just use something as a model or as inspiration if you can't find it. So these guys are going to be put off to the side somewhere. My off to the side is getting more and more crowded. It's just like everything is just piling up. I get on the stream and I say, I really need to clean up this work area. And then I don't. And then it just gets more and more crowded. And that's kind of what's happening. Is I think probably like 75% of our paints there. See? All of those have been used over the last couple of weeks and not put away. And we have these wonderful things into which they could be put away. Lexus made these. These are PLA spools. And she custom designed these inserts so that they are the correct diameter for these paint bottles. And at one point, you can see there's still some in here. Okay. At one point, all of these paint bottles were neatly organized. Looks like I don't use green as much as I use the other colors. Yeah, by color family and kind of even hue, like light to dark. Kind of. Yep. So, went through all the trouble of printing these out and gluing them together, and then the paints just end up there. Maybe what I'll do is, that would be a really boring kind of stream, wouldn't it? Would be to spend like an hour putting all the paints away on a stream. I could call it relaxing paint putting away with Dyson Dungeons. So part of the reason I said New Year instead of Halloween is because I am sleepy. You would think that by 10 o'clock, a fairly normal person would be awake by now, but no. Halloween tradition is to sit up late and watch a couple of movies, The Nightmare Before Christmas and the Ernest Halloween movie. So we sat up late doing that, and then, still sleepy this morning. So if I sound incoherent, I know that you'll go, well, yeah. So what's different about that? Part of it is that I'm a little bit tired from watching movies last night, Halloween movies. So yeah, we had a pretty good Halloween, other than the fact that it snowed and it dropped way below freezing, so the snow is hanging on, which would be very pretty if it were like after Thanksgiving, more than a month from now. But at least it didn't cover the roads. It's just a little bit of snow, so it's on the trees and the leaves and things. It's quite pretty if you don't have to be out in it. Let's see. I need to find a place to put these where they won't be knocked over and broken. Yeah. Especially like this. The sphere has already been broken. I broke it off right at the hand and seamlessly epoxied it back on. Just like I seamlessly epoxied the base on after I broke that off. That was quite a to-do. I'd probably, actually, if I do some sanding later today, which I will, on the submarine, I might try to sand that down. So this one, I'm going to try not to break the bow or the base or any other part of it. Hopefully there's enough space there. That guy's fancy looking. Wonder how that'll, when we run into that one, what its magical powers will be. We paint these figures sometimes pretty ostentatiously, like this guy I was working on. You know, it's like nobody would ever really dress like this, right? He's got a cold sword, magic sword. Yeah, very fancy looking leathery cape and bronzy, brassy armor. That's just the kind of character that our DM would turn into. Good morning. Yeah, I feel like I just woke up too. So I'm going to be rambling, more rambly than usual today. Anyway, this is just the kind of guy that the DM will turn into some. It's hard to, an adversary that's hard to take seriously. It will be kind of like run, shall pass kind of thing, that kind of thing. And we'll say how, and dressed really weird, like how can we take it seriously? And then it turns out to be like a super deadly creature that is drawing powers from the land around it. Anyway, I'm sure that this is, if you watch our D&D stream, our Dungeons and Dragons stream, which you must watch that, either live on Sundays with a live chat. It's not live, the chat is live. We're live, but, as players. I don't want to mislead you. I'm just rambling out about being alive or not. You must watch it, or you can catch it on YouTube. You need to do that and catch up on the old episodes, or even listen to it as a podcast. But this is the kind of thing that's going to show up sometime, and we won't take it seriously, and we'll be rolling 3s and 2s and 6s and stuff and almost die. So that's something to look forward to. Okay. Yeah. Who isn't on asking for a flip? So I got some flipping things here ready in case someone does ask for a flip. I'll do that. But it is Submarine Wednesday, and I am continuing the very slow and methodical process of building a 1960s vintage Renoir cutaway submarine model. I have 3 of them. I have 3 kits from which I am building one. Okay. Because I don't know if you can see it, there's color variations in these missile tubes. There are missile tubes from 3 different kits here that I needed to pull together in order to get the 15 that I needed. But they're in really rough shape. The 2 halves don't line up exactly once they're cemented together, so that the seams need to be filed down and sanded. The tops and the bottoms are not going to fit where they belong. I just know that. So one of the things I'll be doing is working on getting these to fit into the base, at least in a preliminary way. That'll be pretty boring, as I say. Oh, that doesn't fit in the hole. File, sand. Oh, that still doesn't fit. File, sand. Oh, finally it fits. over and over again until they all do. I got 8 of them filed. There are 7 more to be filed down, and they all need to be sanded because the file leaves kind of a rough surface. So I got this really fine 1600 grit emery paper that I use to even those out, and then after I get them to fit in the base, then I'll prime them and then paint them, and then the paint will build up on the base, and then it won't fit anymore, and I'll have to take that off. So just to let you know what you're in for relaxing filing and sanding with Dyson Dungeons today for the most part. If I get some good progress on this, I will be painting the inside of the hull. That'll be pretty nice and interesting. The hull is like this long. Okay, so this is how much you can see, right? It's 3 times longer than that, so there's really no room for it on the work surface the way it's become cluttered, but it needs to be done. So after break, I might do some painting. It will be this light blue color and a very big brush. This is a big brush compared to most of the brushes I use, which are teeny brushes. I'll be doing that so that the inside of the hull matches the bulkheads, but that'll be a real treat. I can show you stuff later, but I really need to get these done because these are brushes. Who always jokes, I can't even find my brushes before 10:30. Well, I did, and it's only 10:19. So joke's on you, who. Okay, got these nice little needle files. We got the ones that are filed, I got the ones that aren't filed. I can tell which is which because these have seams that have ridges on them, and these have seams that have a rough surface from the filing. There. Yeah, I suppose I should start working. I'm going to put a paper towel here, and the reason for that is because the filing and sanding creates dust, plastic, poly, whatever this is, polystyrene or something. It creates plastic dust. It does, and it gets all over the place. It makes a mess. So I needed to move the brushes out of the way, and except the one I'm going to use, so that they don't get all dusty. I did some filing once without moving everything out of the way. Okay, just as another example of how not to do things. It was kind of a wonderful event of how not to do things, and I got little bits of little white specks got on everything, including some wet paint. That was not good. So the tops, not only are there seams on these, but the tops of the tubes flare out just a little bit. I don't know why. It's just the way they the way they were molded. And so they don't fit through the holes in the deck. No, like this part will fit through down to about here. That's where they go. But the top doesn't, so I'm beveling it just a little bit. Which is also a good thing because the tops of these are supposed to fit into some recesses on a third deck. There are 3 decks in the missile launch area. One on the bottom into which this is supposed to be cemented, and none of them will fit, as I mentioned. There's one that slide through which these tubes are supposed to slide down. It's about midpoint here, and that deck has some machinery and things on it. I painted that over the last couple of streams, and it came out okay. That was a little bit of a challenge because there are what look like airlines, pipes that carry compressed air to these missile tubes in that deck, and those were a pain to paint. for me at least, trying to get them, so that they were one color and the deck was the other color, and getting clean lines and stuff on them. Yeah, so I'm going to do this with my glasses off. Just focus this a little bit better. Being nearsighted, I've got, those are trifocals, so there's the space on the glasses. Okay, I'll show you, so when you see old people like me, okay, and they're looking at something up close, they're looking at it like this, which is weird. Like, why do you have your head way up when you're looking at something close? It's because the part of the trifocal that focuses up close is this tiny area right down here, right? Like there, about that big, down at the bottom of the lens, and so you have to look up in order to look through it. To look up so you can look down. So if the whole lens focused, I suppose I could get a pair of glasses that focused, within 6 or 7 inches, but glasses are expensive, and then they don't work the way you want them to. Anyway, I'm nearsighted so that I can actually see things from about this close to about that far away. Yeah. Where a camera, I'd have a very, very small focal plane, I guess it's called. Anyway, yeah. So here I am sanding. This one is a fairly significant ridge. I don't know if it shows up on camera, but if I file across it, you can see where I file it. The glossiness disappears because I'm filing away the surface of the plastic. That line there that you can't see on camera is the raised surface, and I file away at that until the non-glossy part extends past the ridge. That's how I can tell that I've gotten the ridge gone. So here I am. This does leave a flat spot, kind of a flat spot on here you can see now, if this were to focus for you, you could see that there's a light line and a little narrow dark line and a light line. The light line here is the raised part. That's the other side. And this very little bit of a dark line in the center there, that's the gap, the vertical gap. And when that disappears, okay, then the two are at the same level, and there is no longer, like there is here, it started to disappear there. There is no longer a ridge between, or a difference in height between the two halves of the missile tube. And you can run your fingernail across it and feel that it's not there, at least not as pronounced as it had been. So this does leave a little bit of a flat spot on the missile tube, but that once it's painted, the flat spot will be much less noticeable than the difference in height, the ridge that forms between the two halves where they were cemented together. They were really unaligned here, non-aligned. The political environment being unaligned is sort of a thing someplace nations aspire to. Non-aligned countries, non-aligned halves of missile tubes in no way is a desirable feature. Because then instead of looking like a good solid missile tube, it looks like two plastic parts that were badly cemented together. The top especially needs to be evened out like that, because that's the part that has to slide in the hole between in the deck. And when there's like a ridge like that, that it's not going to go through the hole very cleanly. So you can still see a discoloration where the seam is, but that disappears once it's primed. At least that's the hope. Just plugging away here, making thick dust. There's a couple of these where there's actually a gap. They're cement. I had to pick some from a kit where they had already been cemented together, because the main kit I was working from was very poorly manufactured, and there's dimples, invisible dimples. You can kind of see it there, see the variation in the reflection. Yeah, there's dimples in the tube, and I'm going to try to get those to the back where they can't be seen. But it's easier to fix a gap in the seam by putting a little filler in and then sanding it down than it is trying to fix a dimple like that. I mean, just, you can't. There's even little rivets and things. So, yeah. So I had to pick some that had been cemented together by the previous owner, and they were very badly done, as was virtually everything in these kits that had been started before I bought them. That's why I ended up buying 3 kits. See, I don't know if you can see it, but there is a gap there. In this particular one, it looks like. Let's see what it looks like after it's filed down. The gap will probably be filled with this dust from the filing. But yeah, the reason I had to buy 3 kits to begin with was it's possible to get pristine kits, like still in their cellophane almost, but they're really, really expensive, and they're primarily for people who collect these things and just display the kit. But I wanted to build it, so I looked, and there were kits that were already started, or there were pieces missing or likely missing or broken. There's a fair number. All the propellers on all the kits are broken. And the reason they're broken on all the kits is that the people who started them did not carefully cut the propellers off of the sprues or the trees on which they were molded. They just broke them off. And the blades of the propellers were more fragile than the little bits that were holding onto the sprues, and so the blade broke off. So I got 3 broken propellers, from which at some point I'm going to cement the parts together and get one not broken, or the appearance of not broken propeller. Yeah, so 3 kits because they had started. 1 kit, pieces were glued together. They weren't even cemented together. I have no idea what this person used to glue them. It looked almost like it was like wood glue or something, because it wasn't holding the parts. It just sort of messed up their surfaces, because the model cement is not a glue, it's a solvent, and it dissolves the plastic, so it forms like a weld, essentially. No, it isn't what this was. Anyway, some of them they started painting them, and the painting was done very badly. And the paints, 1960s, is pretty much all the paint that one used in the 60s were Testors enamels. In fact, the instructions tell you to use enamels because there really weren't acrylics at model paints. There might have been, but not at the stores I got to go to. What's up with this? Oh no, this is another one of those where it's not cemented together well. I don't know if you can see it, but it moves. Okay. So this is never going to be ridge free unless I'm able to cement it. So I'm just going to do that now and hopefully not make a mess of it. Do it from the inside. See if I can identify the issue again. The bottom of this tube, this was one of those that was put together by somebody else. And the bottom of this tube is not cemented. It's just, on this side it is. Need to get this little brush without getting any on my fingers inside seam. And after that cement sets, then I'll be able to file it down. But as it is, what happens is as I'm filing it, it moves, and so the ridge between the two halves never completely goes away. I'm going to, rather than hold it like this, I'll be right back. I have a tool. It'd be held tightly for a little bit while the cement sets, and I could sit here and hold it, on camera, but it's easier just to do this. Good old-fashioned clothespin is almost the perfect diameter. Except that it didn't, it moved apart. They don't line up. We're looking at tiny little fractions of a millimeter using metric. So much for tools. I'm just going to hold this for a minute or two and then go on to the next one. I'm going to set this one aside because it needs yet a little more filing. This process of filing and sanding takes a surprisingly long time. I think, it's like I've only got 7 of these to do. I've gotten through almost one before I ran into this issue, which is also an issue on one of the other ones that I did last week. thing's not being quite joined. I'm going to set this one aside. Here it is, that's a side. And go on to the next one and see how this one goes. Right at the top here, on almost all of them, you can maybe see there's a little bit of a protrusion. And what that protrusion is where they came off of the tree. And a little bit of the sprue or the tree came off with it, which is good. When you're taking parts off of the tree, or the sprue, I think it's called the sprue, the part that isn't the part, but it's attached to it, molding process, I find that the safest thing to do is cut off part of the tree with the part and then file or sand it off. Okay? Because otherwise, the breaking point might be in the part. Okay? Instead of breaking off part of the tree, you might break off part of the part, and unless you can hide it somehow. Sometimes you can hide that, but there's a gap in it then that has to be filled in and sanded and filed smooth. Otherwise it'll show on the model, which is not good. They have little breaks all over. So there are a couple of parts places on the submarine that I'm working on where that happened, where the only part I could use, the usable part of the 3 kits, was one where there was a gap and I needed to fill in a couple of spots like that. And no matter how one tries, it's really difficult to get it filled, filed, and sanded perfectly. This must have been one I did. I'll take credit for it. Where the seams are really pretty well lined up. At least on the top half of the tube. The part is on camera more likely than not. It's lined up much better on the top of the tube than the bottom. And that can happen as well. What's probably going to have to happen is, for these to fit, is there's just, you can see there's kind of a raised part there, and then there's this little bit underneath here. This little bit underneath here is what's supposed to fit into the recess of the deck, and will almost certainly not. Okay, so that's going to, for each of these, I'll be spending probably like forever. It'll feel like forever watching me do this, but just like I'm doing here, is filing down this part that's under the raised area, which is the base of the missile tube. It's filing down the part that's supposed to fit into the recess so that it actually fits into the recess. And that'll have to be done for each one of them. And then the bottoms aren't even, and they've got little raised flares on them. But I've complained about that constantly with these kits, is that the parts sometimes are meticulously designed and then very badly produced. And I'd have to say that a fairly high proportion of parts don't fit. You know, especially like tabs fitting into slots. There have been a lot of tabs that don't fit into their slots. Especially, and then if they don't fit initially, you know, the slot's too small or the tab's too big after they're painted, even, you know, to scrape the paint off so that the plastic surfaces can make good contact. If one were a very skilled, careful painter, one would never get paint into the slots or onto the tabs, but that's past my skills, so I just file it off until the parts fit. It's weird. On one side, the other side, the parts were lined up really quite well. On this side, weirdly, they're lined up at the top, but right here in the center section, they're not. Probably because they're not molded perfectly symmetrically round to begin with. Eventually, after I get these filed and sanded and then try to fit them into the deck where they go, I get able to time them. Say, how will you get these things painted? You know, there's no place to grab onto. That's right, there isn't. You know, you can't stick them in sticky tack or anything. There's too many of them. So what I'm planning to do, this is the plan, is I got a piece of 2x4, just a scrap piece of wood, and I'm going to put 16 dowels into it, drill holes, and put 16 dowels in and set these on the dowels. And that will hold them upright and separate from each other so that the surfaces aren't touching anything, and I'll be able to prime and paint them while they're standing there like that. That's the plan. I have the wood. It's just getting the drill out and drilling all those holes. And yes, I said 16, even though there's only 15 of these tubes, because there is a special one that I have not yet cemented together. And that one has a spring-loaded little lever in it. And if you look at the box top, which I might show you later, or I might not, I don't know, it says, actually fires, in quotes, fires missiles. And what there is that tube has a little spring at the bottom with a lever and a little plastic replica Polaris missile. And you push the lever down and let it go, and the spring and the lever platform shoots this little plastic missile up through the top of the tube, supposedly, if everything is lined up, through two submarine decks above it, and like several inches into the air above the submarine. You know that the real thing, the real submarine, did not launch its missiles with little springs. This is just a model, so but that's one of the exciting features And I've got all the parts, the lever and the spring and the tubes and everything over in the box over to the side. And as this progresses, I'll get to the point where I'll cement that together and then do the filing and the sanding. Painting that one would be a little bit tricky because I can't prime it and paint it until it's assembled, right? I mean, I could, but then it's just, then you got painted parts that you try to cement together and get to line up, and they don't, and you get this issue. And so all the painting that one has done will have been wasted. In fact, it would, more than a waste, it would have caused a mess. But I have to be careful not to get paint, or at least too much paint, on the launching mechanism. Otherwise, the paint will just get in the way and it won't work. End up having to mask that somehow with little bits of tape, and maybe some of this kind of cotton ball-like, but not cotton ball actually, material to put into the opening, the spring and the lever, so that the paint doesn't get in there. That's another plan. Have plans for this that at some point I'll need to execute, make it so that the assembly process will eventually continue. So I can tell you, when I built this kit originally, which was originally when it came out, talked about that before, I definitely did not spend time cleaning up the seams of the missile tubes. Yeah, just didn't. I just painted them yellow, and even if they didn't fit into the deck below, if you put enough cement on something and it melts, it dissolves it. Cement dissolves the plastic. The dissolved plastic will fit together. So that's why I was able to assemble it much more quickly than this is getting assembled, because I didn't take hours and hours cleaning up the parts and making sure that they all fit, much less painting them. Every surface of this submarine is painted one color or another, whereas when I built it as a kid, probably only like 20% of it was painted at all. But it fills Wednesday, and the viewers can join in on Wednesday and go, is anything going to be accomplished today? Have you been able to make progress? This is one of those things, the filing and sanding, where it can take up the entire stream and maybe still not even be done, and it doesn't look like there's been any progress. If I get to painting the hull after the break today, you'll actually be able to see that there has been progress. Those of you who have not been watching regularly and have seen the progress, the actual installation of painted decks into the hull of the submarine, that kind of thing, always a big celebration. Yay, the control deck and the mess deck and the bunk deck all are in the hull, and I don't have to think about them anymore. Unless you were part of that, you would look at this and say, it is going to be pretty. Actually, I'm going to be it's going to be very nice when it's done, and I'm going to have to find a place to display it where it doesn't just get covered in dust, because there's no way to dust it. I mean, I keep it covered up here in the workshop just to keep the dust off of it, because there's just no way. There is no way to dust the thing if it gets dusty. I think the viewers of Submarine Wednesday have learned to become very patient. Nothing continues to happen every week. So yes, spending time filing and sanding these missile tubes, probably adding up to like 4 hours of sanding and filing, at least at the pace I'm going. Hopefully will pay off when they look like tubes without seams, mostly, for the most part. This one has a really ridge on it. I got all of these hits when I retired. I mean, not at once, but over time, leading up to retirement, thinking, I'm going to be bored silly, not working, plus a commute, using up like 11 hours a day. What am I going to do with my time? So I thought, well, what I did when I was a kid was, if we weren't down at the field, doing whatever we did, playing baseball or football, or just when we were even younger, the playground equipment kind of stuff, the slide and swings and things, if we weren't doing that, or the chores assigned by one's parents, cleaning the basement today, oh yeah, that's how I really want to spend my Saturday. Finally get a Saturday, it's a day off, go down there and clean the basement, kids. That was when we weren't doing that. There was some free time, watching TV, and especially cool Saturday TV. There was always really cool Saturday TV. They played the station we got always had really bad 1950s science fiction, the black and white stuff, usually with some sort of giant creature of one form or another. You could tell that there was no budget, because the costume creatures were silly. Always like cardboard panels with lights and switches that were supposed to be scientific equipment and things. Nobody ever, ever did anything with them. They had lights and switches and buttons, but nobody ever used them because they didn't do anything. Yeah, so when I wasn't doing some of those other things like cleaning the basement or playing down at the field, and the field, we called it the field because that's what it was across the street from the playground, and it was just a field. It was like a half a city block. Later on, they built a a baseball diamond on it, in one corner of it. But for the most part, it was just this field, and they mowed it. It wasn't really grass. It was like whatever grew there, weeds or whatever. But they kept it mowed. The school year, so it was in the fall, so it was like football season. Anyway, yeah, when not doing that, there was a workbench in the basement, much like this one, actually. And there was a window and a fluorescent light. So I would build models as a kid. And it's a good way to get away from the big family. We had a small house with a lot of people in it. So yeah. So anyway, as I was preparing to retire, figuring that I would have way more time on my hands than I knew what to do with, I started buying model kits. Mostly World War II airplanes, which is, the stuff I built, and jets too. 1960s vintage stuff, X-15 and F-104s and things like that. I bought these figuring I would be building models because I had all this time, and then I didn't build any. There's this whole shelf, giant shelf full of them. And some of them are really cool. I've got, there's one of the Moonlander, the service module, and command module. Very nice kit. Pretty expensive, actually. I'd like to build that sometime. I got ambitious and bought a wooden plank model, plank by plank wood construction model of the yacht America, which won the first America's Cup, which is why it's one of the reasons it's called America's Cup. Built that would take even longer than the submarine. Yeah, most of them turn out to be like implements of destruction, airplane models, military airplane models. We've got one that's really kind of cool. It's I don't know who made it, I have to look it up, but it's just like this is a cutaway submarine. It's a cutaway B-29. I haven't looked recently, but when I saw it, it was the first time I ever saw that one. Oh yeah, and then I actually built one of these, and it was not very popular on the stream at all. So I don't know why not. I thought it was pretty fun. Ed Big Daddy Roth was famous for the rat fink. Okay. And put out a whole series of fink models. I built a lot of them when I was a kid. My mom thought that they were really gross and disgusting and didn't understand why I built them, but I thought they were. And that's when I really paid attention to painting. I didn't really I didn't read any books about modeling or anything. I probably could have, but I knew that models looked better if the blue seams didn't show. I didn't have any filler, but I just used the paint. used the enamel paint, just built up layers so that it filled in the seams, the gaps where the cement was. And I got really ambitious, okay, at the time. And okay, so this is a big piece of sprue. I'm going to see if I can cut that off a little bit closer to the model without breaking it. So I looked at the colors on the box top, and I mixed my own colors using the tester's paints, where tester's paints came in different colors, but they were pretty expensive, and the basic colors weren't so much. And so I would mix my own paints to match the colors on the box tops. I got really good at mixing paint colors. That was a totally non-saleable skill, okay? And, oh good, I can mix model paint colors to make it look like, match any other color. Totally non-commercial kind of thing. Now you can get paints in so many different colors from so many different manufacturers that would be a dumb thing to do. But even so, auto modelers will mix paints in order to get the colors just right. But I don't do that anymore, because why? Anyway, yeah. So I've got Big Ed Daddy Roth. They those were also in the 60s, and I built the original ones, and Angel Fink and Rat Fink on a bike. That was a cool one, riding a bicycle. Surf Fink on a surfboard. But they reproduced them back in the 90s, I think, and so the kits are still pretty widely available on resale websites. So I bought them all, thinking, well, that'd be fun to relive that experience, build these Fink models. I actually started one shortly after I retired, and then never really got very far with it, and stuck it aside, and closed the box so it didn't get all dusty. And the very before Submarine Wednesday started, I built the Fink on Wednesdays. And nobody really cared about that. Building an old submarine model, I think, kind of list that on social media. People will check in because it's an old military model kind of thing, but there aren't apparently a whole lot of Fink fans out there. If there are, you can get on social media and say, bring back the Finks. Because if I ever finish the submarine, I could do that. I could do Surf Fink or Angel Fink, maybe, or even the original, the Rat Fink or the Rat Fink on a bike. That one got finished a lot more quickly than this submarine. A lot of surface area compared to the submarine, little bits, but not a whole lot of parts that need different colors. Anyway, yeah, so got done. I started building an ME262. Again, the parts didn't fit. So I learned how to use auto body putty to fill in the gaps and the unevenness and things, and so it looks like a bad car restoration. but I never got around to airbrushing the paint on it. I never learned how to be skilled at airbrushing, and I didn't want to brushing and leave brush marks all over the model. So that one's just been sitting there unfinished for like 20 years. Probably not that long, but at least 10. Anyway, if the submarine ever gets done, Submarine Wednesday will disappear and be replaced by some other model kit. I'm not sure. This is one of those where the top part here was aligned pretty well, but the bottom part here is just not at all. It looks like it was cemented together on a diagonal. Anyway, who knows how this is going to turn out. So I'm getting rid of the seam marks so that when it's primed and painted, you know, they're not going to show, hopefully, or at least be so invisible. They'll be so small that they'll be virtually invisible to the viewer in dim light at a distance. Okay, that's the intent. Who knows how it will actually turn out. So far, the parts that I've done have turned out and they look okay. The parts that are done, which you will see, I promise, after break. I'll be bringing out the hull of the submarine with the stuff that's already installed so you can see it, because I need to paint the inside of the hull in the missile compartment area. Do that today. That's my intent. I intend to do that today. Hopefully I'll be able to turn intent into reality. The real challenging area of this model that needs to be painted, the tops of the missile tubes, the top hatches, not the very, very outer hatch, the inner hatch. There's 2 hatches, okay, for each missile tube. There's one in the outer hull. And then there's one in one of the decks inside. One keeps the water out of the inner hull until it's time to launch these, and the other one keeps the missiles dust free or something, I'm not sure. Anyway, the tops of these tubes are molded into the hull, and since they're part of the tubes, they're also supposed to be painted yellow, but basically they're just a raised circle on this flat piece of plastic representing the deck with the missile tubes. I was thinking, how in the world am I ever going to paint these things, because they're just circles, and getting clean edges is next to impossible anyway, but much less 16 circles. I have an idea that I'm going to look into after the break. either today or sometime maybe next Wednesday, depending on how the rest of this goes. This is the one, oh, wait for that at the end. That was the one that wasn't cemented. Two and one more in here after this one, plus the one that I cemented earlier because it was coming apart. Part at the seams. It was. It's coming apart at the seam. Done piling these. I'm going to give each one a sanding with that 1600 grit emery cloth, just to smooth out the surface where the file filed it. No, I didn't get this at all. Good thing I rotated it. White. So these parts really don't fit. There's three points of not fitting on each of these tubes. One is the base here. I've talked about that, where I know that none of these are going to fit into the recesses in the lower deck. They're just not going to fit because these are too big and recesses are too small. So that's going to take all sorts of weird manipulation in order to get that to work. This, okay. And then the tube needs to slide through a middle deck. And I tried some of these, and the tops, for some reason, have a larger diameter than the rest of it. And so I can get them in, but if they're painted, that's going to scrape the paint off, which is not what I want to have done after they've been primed and painted. And then the third point of failure is that these tops fit into a recess in a deck above it, and they're not going to fit. And then the combination of the top and the bottom, and I've seen this happen on some of the other decks where there's things connected to a deck above and a deck below, is that the height, okay, has to be just right. Otherwise, there's going to be a gap, or it's going to push up on the deck above it or below it. And what are the odds of that? Of the height being right? I'd say pretty low. I'm expecting that I'm going to be doing a lot of test fitting of these before I paint them. So you get to see the decks being put in place and then taken out and put in place and taken out, as the effort is made to get these missile tubes all fit through all three decks, or onto or through all three decks. and in a way that it won't scrape the paint off. I'll be frustrated during that. I'll probably be pretty grumpy. That's what I expect will happen based on my experience with the other parts of this model. But on the other hand, I don't know, it might just go together. There were some serious parts of the control deck that, if I show it to you after the break, I'll explain what happened, where parts didn't line up. They were off by 1/8 of an inch, which was significant. It was the location of the tubes that held the periscopes and radio antenna. The control deck compared to the sail or the conning tower. 1/8 of an inch. And I checked all 3 models to see maybe one of them was just done wrong. And no, that's just, they were all molded that way. Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious. You don't want your periscope tubes to be at an angle. You want them to be vertical. And you want the thing the periscopes, that radio antenna, they slide up and down inside these tubes, so they kind of operate. So I didn't know what was going on. I eventually made a workaround, which turned out okay. You can't really tell it's there, and everything works and it lines up vertically. Well, where I'm going with this story is that, I was going through a used model site. Just look every once in a while. I look to see what's there, because Renwall made some really weird visible stuff, clear plastic parts. There was the classic like V8 engine. Okay, everybody's probably seen that, the visible V8. They also made a visible Wankel engine. You can look that up and find out what it is. Anyway, I'll get back to that because it's kind of cool. I mean, the things that they made. But I was just looking through them because some of them are really quite rare and kind of weird, and if there's a cheap one, it would be tempting to pick it up. But there was one version of this submarine. There are many versions. This is the George Washington, which was the first prototype of the missile launching submarine and also the first kit. Okay. Renwall put out, I think, 4 versions of this kit. The George Washington, and the next one was, I've got one of those, or spare parts, I think. Anyway, one of the first kits had a fold down hull, the outer hull that covered up the part that was a cutaway. Fold it down. One of the later ones, or the last one, they actually made a transparent half hull to cover it up. Which allowed you to see it without having to, move something up and down on hinges that broke. The hinges on this one are broken. I mean, it's just, sometimes you put a model together and it just doesn't work because of fragile parts. Anyway, where I was going with this is that this thing these highly visible parts of the control room didn't line up by like 1/8 of an inch. And so they were unless they were modified, worked at a diagonal. So somebody was selling this kit already built for a lot, like over $100. And all the tubes for the radio periscopes and radio antenna were at an angle. Even 4 iterations of this model later. they never fixed that. And I thought I was just dealing with like an aberration, but no, it was how this thing was actually built. So there's already built up model, which was actually done fairly well. The detail was not, painted the way in the same level of detail that I'm painting. But it was done pretty well. Their lines were pretty straight and all of that. But this thing that I was fighting with, trying, just modifying the kit in a significant way to get these things to line up and not be at an angle. They never fixed the kit. So this person went through all the trouble of building this kit, and all of these tubes just are at an angle. I looked at that and went, I can't believe that flaw was never fixed. And I don't remember it being that problem when I was a kid, when I built mine. I don't remember them not lining up. I mean, it's so obvious that even just trying to slap something together would have noticed it, but there it was. So I'm wondering what'll happen here. So there's 3 decks that all need to line up. The one that holds the base, the one that holds the top, and the one through which all of these pass. And if they don't line up with each other, these missile tubes will all just be like tilted. No, I didn't do a flip. I was waiting for Yoo-hoo. Yoo-hoo. So this is getting to be it's almost a good time to do a flip. I'm almost done with the filing of the second to the last tube here. So before I do the finish sanding to try to get rid of some of the roughness of this and smooth it out again, I will do a flip for who and anybody else who's paying attention. So I'm probably, at the pace I'm going, maybe 6 minutes away from doing a flip. It shouldn't be that long, but it will be because it's going slowly. Anyway, so there's 16 of these tubes that all need to fit onto a top-bottom deck and through a middle deck. And they all have to line up, and they all have to be at a uniform height, distance top to bottom. I mean, just the odds of that happening just seem infinitesimally small. So the test fitting, if that'll happen yet today or not, but the test fitting is going to be an adventure. After break, $11:30 now. I'll probably get some of the sanding done yet. I need to cement together the 16th tube, the one with the lever in it and the spring. I can't keep putting that off because it needs to be painted and primed at pretty much the same time as the rest of these. Although there'll be a fair amount of prep work on it to mask the lever part. I could spend some time doing test fitting, but what I'll likely do is paint the inside of the hull, at least a single coat. It'll take more than one coat, but it's an important thing to do. Yeah, I'll just cover this. That's right, this is all full of plastic dust. I've got all my flipping things here. I'm going to flip each one twice. We got steer. Do that. Once up, once down. We've got paint. Face down. Up so far we've got 50-50 going on everything, and then we got this little balsa wood thing here. And everything came out 50-50, one of each. Huh. That's what the odds say should happen, but that isn't always what does. All right, so those things are supposedly filed now. These are the ones that are going to go from this to this as I pull out this 1600 grit emery cloth and just spend a little bit of time getting perfect, but just getting some of the roughness out from the filing so that it looks you know, I'm going to feather the edges in a little bit. There's a lot of plastic dust on these. There's going to be more as I manipulate them to get them to fit into the things into which they need to fit. After the fitting, wash them and let them dry before I paint them, because if there's dust on them, then this whole effort, you can just see that happening, right? Make this whole effort to get rid of the seams and smooth them out and all of that, and then there's dust, and then there'll be blemishes in the paint. And what would be the point of that? I shouldn't toss them in like that, because that gives you the possibility of breaking it right along one of the weakly. There might be a seam that's weakly cemented. Not that it was cemented every week, but that the cement joint is weak. Trying to be careful with words that have more than one meaning. And so it isn't so much trying to be careful with the words as it is just being silly about it. Character in the Dungeons and Dragons campaign, which is what Dice and Dungeons is all about. It's not about painting. That's a secondary kind of thing, almost an accidental kind of thing. Dice and Dungeons is about its Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And my character, a Furbog fighter, is one of those people who take things very literally. So there's a lot of that kind of thing. The explanation of words and the misuse of words, and the intentional misunderstanding of words that have more than one meaning. So sometimes that carries over onto relaxing painting as well. Why not? Maintain some continuity. So the relaxing painting stream, as I remind everybody at least once during the streams, started because we do minifigs and use minifigs and dungeon tiles in our D&D campaign. Dungeon tiles printed back there, and I'll show you them later. I always do a commercial for our dungeon tiles. They're not for sale yet. Maybe someday you'll have an opportunity to own Dyson Dungeons dungeon tiles. You never know. They're pretty cool. But we started using them on the stream, and to make the whole combat situations especially look cool on stream. It's not just a 1x1 plastic grid on the table or something, but three-dimensional. So we started producing dungeon tiles and painted them, and our DM said, well, if you're going to paint them, you might as well stream the painting, because you're painting them anyway, so it's not like you're doing something you wouldn't be doing otherwise. And that's how Relaxing Painting started. And Submarine Wednesday started as a sequel to Fink Wednesday. I mentioned that. The first model I built was a Mother's Worry rat fink model. Venture, but this started that way. Submarine Wednesday started because one day I didn't have any dungeon tiles or minifigs to paint, and so it was, well, should I just skip it? It says, no, pull out one of your models. Okay, why not? So it did that as kind of a filler, and then it became every Wednesday is Model Wednesday. I finished the Fink after about 3 or 4 of those. It didn't take too long to get that done. It came out pretty cool. I really like the Fink models, even though nobody else on Earth does. And then it's, what should I build next? And it's, well, let's take on the Renwall submarine, not knowing that it would be like a lifelong project. Not just my life, but probably 2 generations following before it's ever really completed. I have joked, but I don't think it is actually a joke, that building this model will end up taking longer than it took to build the original submarine, and that might actually turn out to be true. Now, granted, it's only like 3.5 hours of work once a week, as opposed to like 24/7 or something whenever building this thing. But believe it or not, the original George Washington was built ahead of schedule. At least, launched ahead of schedule. As we know with ships, once they're launched, they're not nearly done. They still have to do a whole lot of interior work and shakedown cruises and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, this might actually take longer than it took to build the George Washington originally, at least in terms of, calendar days. Not amount of building time, person hours. Okay, this is one person doing 3.5 hours once a week, minus some weeks because of travel and chores and things when the stream doesn't happen. But yeah, I don't know if it came in under budget. This was probably one of those critical Cold War era critical military things that you didn't ask how much it cost, you just got it done. Once this was launched, it gave the U.S. a huge strategic advantage in the missile thing, because the submarine was, unlike missile silos, which are pretty easy to see, or strategic bombers, which are also pretty to see and are vulnerable to attack. the submarines were pretty invisible. They could sneak up close. These were not like intercontinental range missiles. They were like intermediate range, and so they were pretty threatening because the warning time, if one was launched, if it was even detected when it was launched, the warning time was really very short. Of course, that was not the stated intent, was not to pose an offensive sneak attack threat, right? This was a purely second strike design. The intent here was that the first strike took out our land-based missiles and our strategic bomber fleet, or if the strategic bombers got shot down on their way to the target. We wanted to be able to strike back in a way that would be mutually assured destruction, right? So the intent here was to have a missile launch capability that would be scary enough because it was undetectable and the detection time, the warning time would be very low. So it would survive the first strike and have enough destructive power to beat through the assured destruction in the other direction. That's the intent of the submarine. Constantly reminded at that time, the whole purpose of having thousands of nuclear warheads was to never use them. We're going to spend billions and billions of dollars, create all sorts of nuclear waste and stuff. So that they would be useless. We've kept that up ever since. Anyway, this was the first one ever. Not this one. This is very tiny. Okay. And it wouldn't be much of a deterrent, this particular submarine, because it's really, really small. But the full-sized one was quite a breakthrough. The destructive power of these submarines is really pretty incredible when you think about it. The modern ones have 16 missiles on them, and each missile, we don't know how many warheads are on each submarine, but we do know that each missile is capable of carrying at least 3, if not more, independently targeted warheads. And each warhead is probably in the vicinity of like a third of a megaton, maybe. Pretty boomy, pretty messy, if they were launched and hit their targets. So yeah, that's the point of the submarine, is to be part of the nuclear triad, to be a deterrent, because it would survive the first strike. So why do a first strike if you're just going to get blown up after you do your first strike anyway? Pretty exciting stuff that continues to this day. At the pace I'm going here, I probably can. I'll keep sanding these until I'm done and then take the break. So the break might start a little later than usual because I just want to get this done. And then after the break, I can move on to something different. Maybe it'll be maybe it'll be hull painting, maybe it'll be test fitting, maybe it'll be cementing together the 16th tube, the one with the spring in it. Could be a couple of those things depending on how they go. But at least this phase of it, the pre meaning before, pre-test fitting phase of the missile tubes will be completed, and then I can move on to let's see if we can get these to actually work with the decks that came with these kits. Yeah, I'm thinking about it in terms of sequence of events. It makes sense to try to do the test fitting, pre-assembly test fitting, before painting the hull, because it's going to involve taking the parts and putting them in place and taking them up, and then making adjustments and then putting them in place again, kind of back and forth. And it's likely that the paint will be pretty scarred up from that going back and forth, that iterative process of test fitting. So what I am most likely to do then after break is cement together the tube with the spring lever that fires, in quotes, missiles. Okay. And then do test fitting rather than painting. But the test fitting involves working with the hull of the submarines, so I'll clear out a whole lot of area here. But you'll be able to see the progress that has been made, and also see how this will all come together and what yet needs to be done. This section of the submarine really should have gone very quickly, but again, it's, parts don't fit. Painting was more complicated than I had hoped. I waste 20 minutes at the beginning of every stream just talking about stuff before I actually get going. My breaks are longer than I promise, so there's less time actually spent doing stuff. There's all sorts of ways that things don't get done. It takes longer than one would maybe think it should. Anyway, yeah, so this one, it was not the first atomic powered submarine. And that one I think was named Polaris. That was a big deal back in the 1950s because the atomic powered submarine would never have to come up. Okay. Most submarines until then were diesel electric. They had diesel engines and batteries, and they could only stay submerged as long as their batteries had enough power, not just move the submarine, but also, keep life support going and maybe they didn't have hot water for the shower there. I'm sure there were multiple inconveniences about running submerged on battery power, but it had to keep all the equipment going, the sonar and the life support and the stove and things. Had to keep that going. And these were not super efficient. These are all lead acid batteries. Anyway, so the time submerged was limited. I can't remember how long they could stay down. I think it was a surprisingly long time, like maybe more, a couple of days even. They did, kind of clever things, like they'd put a snorkel in so that it was possible to stay submerged, not very deep, but still not on the surface. And the snorkel would suck in air, which could replenish, the atmosphere of the submarine for the crew, but basically was there so that the diesel engine could run and charge the batteries. Well, it wasn't on the surface, but the diesel engines made a fairly loud noise, and that could be picked up with passive sonar. And the snorkel was above the surface, so that broke the surface and could potentially be detected visually. Otherwise, the submarine had to surface and run its diesel engines in order to charge the batteries. So the huge breakthrough with the nuclear submarine, there were other advantages, but the biggest was that it could just, nuclear reactor doesn't need air, doesn't need oxygen. There's no combustion going on there. So it could stay submerged. They don't come up. They don't have to. The other advantage, of course, is that, a nuclear reactor doesn't have huge diesel cylinders pounding away either, so it's much quieter. That was a huge breakthrough, the first nuclear-powered stuff in submarines, because of the advantage that gave in terms of being able to stay underwater, which, doesn't make them totally undetectable, but certainly less easily detected than if there's a surface ship. So you could stay submerged, quieter, and then the efforts after that largely focused on making submarines quiet. Color design so that there wasn't any cavitation, the kind of thing that makes bubbles, that make noise from the propellers, the shape of the hull, the coatings on the hull, what we would think of as the paint, but more than that, just the coatings, sound-absorbing coatings, the equivalent of sonar stealth, right? Shooting there that will definitely get in the way of it fitting. So yeah, this wasn't the first atomic submarine that was like a well-established kind of thing already by the time this came out. But it was the first one that could launch missiles while being submerged. probably, we didn't know it at the time, but probably was a hugely destabilizing thing in the Cold War. Because, even though we said, well, the whole point of this is to survive your first strike because, whoever wasn't us, we're not going to attack you with nuclear weapons first. We can't trust you. You could do that to us, and you might wipe out all our missile silos and most of our airplanes, and then you would win because we would be reduced to radioactive ash, and you wouldn't be. Although you'd be downwind of it, so what's the point there, right? It would get you eventually anyway, but no. We had these submarines, and they would guarantee survivability. We might lose a couple. They might know where a couple are and be able to sink them before they could launch, but the point of this was to have missiles available so that after you turned us into a radioactive wasteland, you could be sure that we'd do the same thing to you. Yep. And that is how we get along to this day. Pretty cool. There's the dogs are running around. Anyway, this was the first one. It was called a prototype. There were changes made in the design later as people learned what worked and what didn't work, and whether the bunks were comfortable or not, comfortable enough. Yeah, we could store enough food, whatever. It launched the first generation Polaris missiles, the single warhead missiles. This is before we had MIRVs. The multiple independent re-entry vehicles. That was another destabilizing breakthrough. All sorts of really amazing breakthroughs in world destruction stuff going on. So MIRVing was important because each delivery vehicle, cruise missile, submarine launched ballistic missile, they all had acronyms, usually 4-letter acronyms, not 3. So it was cool having 4-letter acronyms. Each one could now carry more than one warhead, and each warhead could be independently targeted. So it wasn't just like, oh, I've got 3 warheads, we're all going to land on, the same target. It's like, I got 3 warheads, and you're going to hit 3 different targets. That was cool. Another giant destabilizing breakthrough. We were all excited about that. Because after we were turned into lifeless ash pit, each of our missiles could destroy more than one place, but the place that turned us into an ash pit. And the reason that was important wasn't so much that we could hit a whole lot of different targets. It was that, say like half of the missiles were destroyed, that prior to that, it would have destroyed half of the warheads, But if each missile could carry like 4, 5, even 7 of these things, maybe. You only need, instead of 7 missiles to destroy 7 targets, you only need 1 missile. So again, that survivability issue was driving a lot of the innovations in nuclear warfare. We got MERV, that you got MERV, and then we tried to do the anti-ballistic stuff, and none of that ever worked. And now it sort of does, but we don't talk about it as much. There was a whole lot more. You know, it might have been disinformation at the declassified level or whatever, but there's a lot more discussion about our offensive and defensive capabilities back in the 50s and even 60s than there is now. Maybe because it was new, you know, maybe because we thought about it a lot more. Like, oh yeah, it's really comforting to know that if we're turned into a lifeless ash pit, that whoever did that to us would be facing the same fate. Yeah, we're just as good. We would never use them first, but we sure as heck are going to make sure that when we did use them second, you would know it. Mm-hmm. So, you know, since we couldn't fight a real war with each other because we would all be turned into lifeless ash pits. Most of our wars were done, you know, in other countries, or through coups or government changes, or, you know, just other ways of doing battle that didn't involve direct confrontation. That's why a lot of that happened. You know, it probably might have happened anyway, but I think the amount of it, you know, the proxy kind of stuff, you can't have this country. That would be dangerous if you were the major influence in this country. So we need to be the overthrow of governments by one side or the other in order to have a government that was friendly to them, even if it was in a place that just had no, as they would say, strategic importance. Every place was a battleground because you couldn't have the real battle. Familiar, doesn't it? You know, so then you get situations like Ukraine, you know, and suddenly there's a reminder, oh yeah, by the way, I know you haven't really been paying attention to this for quite a while, but by the way, there's still like nuclear weapons that are really bad stuff, and just remember that they're there and they could be used, and it would be a bad thing. So those are called saber rattling. Okay, well, nobody's got real sabers anymore, but it's a weird phrase, isn't it? Saber rattling. Oh, I've got a sword and a scabbard here on my belt, and I'm just going to shake it. I'm going to rattle it to make noise. Ooh, well, that's pretty scary. I've got one of those too. I want to make some noise with mine. Seems kind of pointless, but that's what it was called. Nuclear weapons were sabers that were never used. They were just made noise about them. Yeah, we did actually get a lot of trick-or-treaters. It was really kind of a surprise because the weather was terrible. It wasn't as bad as, you know, a downpour, but it was really cold and it was snowing. So the little kids were chilled and wet. Well, we probably got 50 kids or so. I didn't keep track. There were just a lot of them. Neighborhood did kind of a cool thing. They got some trailers. They kind of beefed up with Halloween lighting, you know, purple and orange lights and little figures and stuff. Decorated trailers, and they pulled the kids around on those trailers so that they didn't have to walk so far between houses. Well, how did I not get the bottom of that? Okay. Well, I would catch that when I did the test fitting, but there's a really bad chunk of plastic just hanging out there that would mean it wouldn't fit at all when I did the test fitting. Thought I was filing the bottoms of all of these, but apparently this might have been one of the earlier ones before I was filing off the bottoms. But yeah, I was really busy. And the kids were, the energy level was amazing. I mean, it was cold and wet. And these little kids were so excited. They would run from up and down the driveway and from one house to the next. Just tearing along, laughing. So it was kind of cool. How about at your place? Oh, the best costume? The best costume actually was one of the adults who was dressed as a witch. It was a really good costume. There were two Oompa Loompas. Like Oompa Loompas from the Gene Wilder version of the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Willy Wonka and the Gene Wilder movie. And there were two of them that came dressed as Oompa Loompas, and they really nailed it. I would say that they had the best costume. I don't think there was many characters in like Disney movies as there used to be. Them seem to have held up. What, the worst costume? Probably the one that didn't have any costume at all. Oh, so you didn't really have too many, huh? But yeah, I mean, if you live in a place where it's like the equivalent of trekking up a mountain in order to get to it, you definitely want to make it worthwhile. So we had these little bitty, fun size candy bars, and everybody got like 2 or 3. So these little, that was kind of funny though. I mean, funny in a little bit, yeah, kind of amusing, is it was really cold out, right? It was like 36, 35 degrees or something, and snowing. So all the kids had gloves and mittens. And we had these little fun-sized candy bars in a bowl, and it was take a couple. And these big floppy gloves and mittens, and I couldn't grab onto the candy or hold it. So they're just grabbing there and going. Finally, they'd get one, and they just want to be done with it. And I said, no, take another. I'm sure it was more amusing for us than it was for them. But, yeah, there were some good costumes. There were a lot of kids. We have these inflatables, a big dragon and a unicorn and a cat and a ghoul and a giant 12-foot tall ghost or 10-foot tall or something. So they kind of enjoyed those. Some of them would pose for pictures with them. Wow. Okay, see all that gray? That's that plastic dust. So I've covered with polystyrene plastic dust. Okay, it is a little bit past typical break time, so I'm going to start my break soon. When I get back, the things I need to do before I can even prime these things is I need to see if they're going to fit. And I was going to paint the inside of the hull. I'm not sure I'll do that or not. I'll see how things fit. But I'm almost certain that this is going to be a challenge. That I'm going to start with the base. Bottoms here need to fit into recesses in a deck. And I'm going to say that that's just not going to happen. I'm going to be doing a lot of really fine filing of this little bit of a lip down at the bottom here, which is probably too thick. That is to say, the lip is bigger than the depression into which it goes. There's a ridge here that's supposed to be right flush with the deck. So these things that probably need to be filed down as well as filed around. I don't want to completely file them off because that's the thing that holds it on. But as you can see, there's a lot of plastic here, and I could get rid of at least a third of that without compromising the ability of this to. Porco Rosso. Yeah, that would work. Porco Rosso's a really good character. You'd have to shave, though, or wear a mask. That's one of the really cool kits. I don't know where it is now. Okay, this was really, really hard to find. And my daughter found it for me. But Porco Rosso, if you know the pig masks are cheap, you've looked into it already. See, that's the Porco Rosso model. Is my daughter. I build 1/48 scale models. Yeah, I don't build them. I bought 1/48 scale models because that's the size of the model, the scale that I like to build. I built like one. And she found the Savoia, the Porco Rosso's plane, as a 1/48 scale model. Maybe during break I'll pull that out. It's really cool. I have some really neat models. That's one of them. Some models are really hard to find in 1/48 scale. You get them in 1/72 a lot, like SR-71 Blackbird. That was a hard one to find and fairly expensive. Yeah, so I'm looking around. I'm looking at the shelves here to see if I can see it, but I'm going to pull that one out because that's a really cool one. Yeah, I've got Catalina. I've got all sorts of really cool stuff that if I had like another 20 years, might be able to get into some of them. But I'm going to take a break, and I'll be back in about a half an hour. So it's like 12:15 now, so it'll be like 12:45. I'll try to keep the break short. I keep saying that, it never happens, but I will try to do that. Come back, and I'll be pulling out the parts of this deck to start doing some test fitting, the top, bottom, and center of all of these. And I also do need to glue together the one with the lever, so I'll show you that. We'll see how that looks as well. So thanks for, yes, I am. We have leftover Halloween candy, some of which is not bad. Okay, some of which is really gross. Well, we think it is. Like, nobody likes the Almond Joys. I don't know. Shredded coconut doesn't go over well here. But some of the others, yeah, will get consumed. You can't let it go to waste. It probably has a shelf life of only like 3 years or something. 2 of which are already used up. Yeah, that's right. So Almond Joys and Mounds bars, those are the ones that are always left at the bottom of the bowl, you know, of the leftover Halloween candy. And there you go. Okay, I'm gonna take a break. I'll see you back in a bit. No, yeah, it's not too bad. Well, 5 minutes longer than I should have because I just lost track of time reading emails and catching up with the news, because there's always something going on and it's hardly ever good. But yeah, one more thing. So this is the instruction sheet. I'm on step 6, missile decks. I'll show you some parts in a bit. These are the missile tubes that I'm working with, and as you can see, they fit into a deck down here. They're supposed to be cemented in. They slide up through this middle deck, and they're supposed to be attached to the top deck. All of these are supposed to come together, slide nicely into the hull here, okay, matching up with the markings, the little, you know, spaces on these bulkheads, yeah, on both ends. So somehow or other, all of that is supposed to fit together and slide into the hull and fit on both ends and top to bottom. What are the odds? Pretty small. So you can see here, this is the diagram of the missile launching tube. There's this little lever thing and a spring, and it all goes together inside of there. I haven't put that together yet. Thank you. But that's something I need to do. So here are some paper towels protecting everything from dust. And there's the stuff. Those are the parts. So this bulkhead, the forward bulkhead, is already installed in the hull of the submarine. This bulkhead is this, okay, that goes there, and you can see, you know, there's a control panel down there for the missile launch kind of stuff. You know, some machinery. Oh my, that really needs to be touched up right there. I don't know how I managed to miss that. In fact, I might just take care of that right away. You'll see some relaxing, touching up painting as I fix that flaw. That's going to be very, very visible. It's right at you look at it from this side, so you see that. This bulkhead goes back here. And all this stuff here, the machinery and whatever, and the toolkit, that faces toward the aft of the submarine. And the aft of the submarine includes the reactor and a whole bunch of machinery back here. And hopefully, you know, this looks pretty straightforward. Hopefully that will go fairly quickly. But this deck still poses a lot of challenges. See these little depressions here. Let's take one of these tubes so you can see what's supposed to happen. So you take one of these tubes and that's supposed to fit nicely into that depression. Okay, it's supposed to sit in that deck, and it clearly doesn't. I mean, it doesn't even come close. It's supposed to insert in there so that this ridge is flush with the floor. So it's not just that there's a layer of primer paint on there, but it's that the diameter of the missile tube down here is too high. So all of them are going to have to be filed down. There's a lot of plastic there. I'll probably need to take like at least a quarter of it, maybe a third of it off, so that each of these will fit there. And you can kind of push one into place, but I don't want to break this. So each one of these has to be done. You can see there's a little notch here. Okay, that notch is supposed to fit over the little tab here. You can see immediately that that notch is way smaller than the tab, and that's true of all of them. It might be possible. It might be that the notch is the thing that's causing the problem more than anything. I might be able to just take a needle file and just carve out these notches so that they're, right now it's probably maybe 60% as wide as the notch, as the tab there. I do have to take a little file and go around the edges here though, because if these are going to be cemented in, okay, I'll just show this. This has been primed and painted. If those are supposed to be cemented in, I can't have paint there. You can't have paint around these edges because the cement doesn't adhere to the paint. It just dissolves the paint and makes a mess of it. So part of what I need to do is take something like this and clear the paint around, clear the paint from around the edge. It makes a mess. So yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that needs to be done to get them to fit. What I'm going to do then for this deck, the color of the plastic is really similar to the color of the paint. This deck, it's, you know, getting the paint off the inside here, just so that the diameter is correct, and getting some of the paint off the perimeter like this, again, so that it sets down on it, and so that the cement will adhere when it comes time to cement these in. The risk of cementing these in early, though, is if they're done first, is that there's, okay, so assuming this actually fit, and let the slot fit on the tab, that's on there, okay, it then, moving along here, needs to go through this deck. So let's just take this one. It needs to go through here. It's a very tight fit. Okay, I can feel it, and especially near the top. The top has a larger diameter than the rest of this. When you push it in, the last thing I want to do is scrape all the paint off of it. And right now that fit is so tight that the yellow, there's a layer of primer. Again, there's a layer of primer and then a layer of gloss yellow. So I'm probably going to have to, I don't know why that is, but the tops of these tubes, you know, it's like really hard to push that through, and then it's looser, like this one. So it's weird. And now even the diameter of these holes is different. This one goes through fairly easily. This one sticks. So I'm going to have to increase the diameter of these holes, you know, scraping some paint in the plastic. And then So I'll leave this through here. It goes through there. No. Rotate it around. This is the one I've been working with. It goes there, and then here. And then this is supposed to fit neatly, and that kind of does, into the recess on the top of this deck. Okay, and all of these need to line up perfectly, and when the decks are inserted into the hull. Right? There we go. Yep. That's how it's going to work. Definitely. So none of these things fit, you know. The slots on the base here do not match up at all with the tabs on this deck. So these do not fit into the deck very well. The clearances on this deck where the tubes are supposed to go through are too small, and it will rub off the paint later. So that needs to be kind of cleaned out. The only thing that does seem to work at this point is that these do fit into that recess, and I just need to, like I did before, scrape the paint off there so that they fit. This is the special one. There's no base to this one because the bottom of the tube is sealed, and it goes up through here, and there's a little hatch that opens up, boop, so that the missile inside the tube with the spring will be launched. All right, so I've got a lot of, I just got a lot of stuff to do. I'm going to start at the bottom deck, doing what I did here, which is to scrape the paint away from the edges and the bottom, okay, just on the inside of all of these without messing up the paint on the deck itself. So this was the challenge that I talked about, is that the missile tubes are supposed to be yellow, see, and they are in the box top as well, is that the tops of the tubes are nothing more than these little round things that are printed into the top of the deck, which are, I mean, just painting those would be impossible. There's no way I can paint those and have clean edges around all of them. So I said, well, maybe I can make a mask that I can put over this that would allow me to spray paint it. And I thought, well, maybe this deck, which is below it, which is supposed to line up with it, could serve as the mask. Maybe even though the diameter of each of these holes is larger than the diameter, okay, you can see that. If the diameter of those holes is larger than the diameter of the tops of the hatches, it might be okay, you know. If I used that as a mask and spray painted it, the paint would extend around the very edge of these, but they would be round. I mean, if I use this as a mask, it would make sure that they were all round. Now I've got 2 extra models, okay? And each of those models has, one of the models has a deck just like this one. The other one is built differently. But each of them has these things. They're warped. But what I can do, and since those are just extra pieces, is I might take one of these middle decks and the other one that I've got of the deck with these hatches and try it. That's the only thing I can think of that would allow me to paint these. The alternative is to just not paint the hatches on the top, not paint them yellow, despite the fact that the instructions say paint them all yellow. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, because I know that an important part of this model is to get these missile tubes cemented into the base here, which means that they need to fit and they need to be vertical. I need to clean the paint out of the base so that it doesn't interfere with the cementing. And then there's just a lot of work to be done on the bottoms of each of these to make the slot the right size so that it fits onto the tab and sets down inside. Now, because none of them fit at all, I can't tell whether that they're going to go down far enough or not. Not even to the point where I can do that. And then this is the one, these are the parts for the, you can see there's a little, open it up. This little spring and lever, and then the hatch. Oh yeah, and that's a ladder that's supposed to go in somewhere. That's next to impossible to reach, that I need to work on someday as well. I'm not sure do I want to cement these parts together? Do I want to work on doing more filing and cleaning up? No brother. Thanks for dropping in, though. The sub is coming along really slowly, but I'll just demonstrate once again. I filed and sanded these down so that they are now not, you can't see the seams anymore, hopefully. But I'm struggling with getting them to work. I've discovered that this is the bottom deck, and there's this tiny little gap here that's supposed to fit on a little tab, and they don't. None of them fit. So manipulation needs to be done with each of the bottoms of each of these tubes to get them to fit into the place where they're supposed to go. And then the struggle is, once those are done, they need to go up through this deck. The tolerance is, it's too close to put them up through without rubbing off the paint once they're painted, so I have to make the diameters here a little bit bigger. Then they go onto this deck and get cemented in at the top, and then all three decks need to be aligned and slide neatly into the hull of the submarine, matching up with both bulkheads. Yeah, exactly that, right? So we'll see. So and then I still got this warp. Yeah, it's just a lot of filing and sanding. Like when I did this when I was a kid, it didn't matter. I didn't clean off the seams at all. I just painted them yellow. And if they didn't fit, what you could do is, because it was tube model cement that melted the plastic, it was really straightforward. Just put a whole lot of it in there and push it in until the melted plastic got out of the way. This one sort of fits. You can see how the missile tube is supposed to sit in there. And then this deck goes over it. I'm thinking down to about there. That must be why this other ridge is on there. Yeah, all of this needs to go together. There's 16 of them. They all need to fit. That all needs to slide together. And once it's together, it's supposed to fit into the hull very neatly and look like a professional modeler had done it. So far, I haven't even been able to hold one together, so... Yeah, that's right, is it should be, without getting it too terribly hot, as long as it's sort of warm, I can heat it and just hold it. Otherwise, this deck came out, I thought, pretty well. These pipes don't look too bad. I'm guessing that this machinery, that these pipes are supposed to connect compressed air to the missile tubes, right? So this is like a storage tank that holds the air at a constant pressure this is maybe the compressor. This is some sort of control mechanism. So the compressor has this big pipe that keeps the pressure in there constant, and this monitors it. So it's got like relief valves and things on it to make sure there's constant pressure. Because if you fire one of the missiles, you know, the amount of compressed air in here is going to drop precipitously. So this needs to pump a lot more in and be controlled. And the amount of air, you know, as you launch each of these missiles, it has to be just enough to get it to the surface so that the rocket engine can ignite, but not so much that it, well, too little and it doesn't break the surface too much. It goes up too high and maybe will fall over before the rocket ignites, something like that. So that would be bad, I mean, in terms of that. So, oh yeah, I almost forgot. As I was putting, you know, doing a little test fitting here, like this, and that actually fits in the slot, I discovered there's a spot here that needs to be touched up. So I'm going to do a relaxing painting by touching up that one little blue spot on the beige paint there. That's going to be the relaxing painting du jour. And then something like this that requires some care, because if the cement gets on the lever or if the parts don't line up, then the whole launch tube thing is useless and I'd have to find replacement parts. So I'm not going to do that after break. I tend to lose focus a little bit after break somehow. So I'm going to do this little bit of touch-up and make sure that there is, yeah, this one's okay. Look at this one from this side. So that all looks pretty good. But I'm going to do that touch-up there. I need the bone light. And I'm actually going to put my head magnifiers on for this. I'm going to use the bitty brush. And hopefully I can do that little bit of painting. This tiny bit of relaxing painting without making a mess of things. I don't know how I missed that. It's such an obvious film in a really, really obvious place. That's probably why. As I said, oh, how could I possibly miss that? I'll get it later. And then I missed it. He's on. We'll take a look at it. That should be easy to fix. Find out if it really is or not. And then there's a spot here. I can't tell if that's just like a piece of dust. Yes. Okay. I was afraid that there would be something else I'd need to touch up there, but it wasn't. Here we go. This is going to be really a thrill here. I'm going to be doing a dot of relaxing painting. I'm even going to put the easel here in a dangerous place. You can see me put a dot of paint out. There. Yeah, so here we go. Here we go with the, hopefully this will be okay. Relaxing painting dot. Seriously requiring some intense concentration. Yeah, I think that looks okay. That was it. That was the relaxing painting du jour. I'm going to take this part out because that's the one I'm going to be working on. take this off. Don't need that now. Clean the brush. Go back to filing. That's right, you've got a full-time job now with a fairly long commute. Yeah, busy at work, and then you come back and you try to do your streams. That's a busy life, at least for me. I mean, I should say that I have nothing else I have to do other than the streams 3 times a week, and it's only like 4 or 5 hours. 4.5 hours with, getting set up and turning things off when I'm done. But yeah, managed to stay busy anyway, because there's always something. Since I'm going to be filing and sanding, I'm going to just cover all of this up. But you had a chance to see that there are actually parts. There are parts to the submarine here that are painted and are ready to be put together as soon as I can get these tubes, these missile tubes, and the things into which they fit in condition to do that. But if they don't fit into the base, then I'm not going to get anywhere at all. So that has to be done. I'm going to start by just cleaning out trying not to do that. Okay, running it along the surface. I want to keep it inside here. I'm cleaning out the paint around the diameter. No. Running it along the surface just mars the paint on the surface, and then I have to repaint it, missing the whole point here. Cleaning out the paint from the bottom and the sides of these, so that when the tubes are eventually cemented in, and they might not be, okay, a lot of these parts are held in place by friction because the tolerances are so slim. As you saw, there's a deck on the top as well. Thank you. Yeah, if you can join in later, that'd be great. But because it's held in both the top and the bottom, if everything lined up and the tolerances were small, just they would just be held in place. They couldn't go anywhere because none of the parts around it could. And I would prefer that, because the cement, no matter how careful one is with it, always carries with it the risk of slopping onto the surface, and you can't clean it up. It's not like a glue, even an epoxy, that you can get to real quickly with a solvent and clean it, because it actually dissolves the plastic. If it so much as touches the plastic, it mars the surface. And it makes for a really solid joint because it welds the parts together, but it does so at the risk of it's making a disaster. And I did that with one of the tubes, one of the missile tubes. I was cementing it together, and I got some on my finger, just a tiny touch of cement on my finger, and touched the tube. That's all it took. Just touched the tube, and then there was a permanent fingerprint melted into the side of the tube. Okay, you could look at me doing this and say, you wouldn't have to do this if you hadn't gotten paint in there in the first place. And that is true. If I had figured out a way to paint the deck without getting any paint into these wells, then I wouldn't have to be cleaning it out, would I? But I didn't, and so I do. But now that I found kind of a technique of keeping it on the work surface and using the point of the file, it's moving and it's cleaning up pretty well. I just have to do this 15 times. I'm sure there would have been some really simple techniques that probably people out there who do painting and modeling with more skill than I have would have been aware of some way, like not getting the paint in these wells even while brushing the surface of the deck. Using a small brush and painting it to the edge, not down into it, instead of using a large brush and smushing the paint all over it. Right? But I did. That's what I did. I just wanted to get it painted quickly with, trying to avoid as much as I could brush marks. And as a consequence, filled these wells with paint, which not only keep the parts from fitting in very well, but will also keep the cement from adhering. And in the process of cleaning it up, getting little paint dust particles everywhere. There's a surprisingly large amount of paint in these things. I'm discovering as I'm scraping it out. But thanks for joining in, O'Brien. Thanks for joining in general, to anybody who's watching this stream or catching it on YouTube. Let's see. So yeah, I'm going to show you the Savoia model. I forgot to get that out during break. I tend to, get distracted by doing things that are kind of requiring immediate attention. Getting something to eat. Maybe I'll remember it and show you. I could show you all the finks too. It's really too bad. I have to say I'm really kind of disappointed, seriously, that the painting, the construction and painting of the fink model didn't attract very much attention from viewers of relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons, because they're just fun to build, and they're kind of fun. They're just fun things in general. The Ed Big Daddy Rock, but maybe they're just too obscure. There's a lot of people who do military models, or just do painting, or just like to listen to some really old guy ramble on about old stuff. But the fink models just didn't catch on. Maybe it was, maybe if I advertise it a lot, if I talk about them and drive up anticipation, it's like, what is this fink model thing he's talking about all the time? And then I show you one and you go, wow. This, maybe I'll do that. It's just say, okay, look at this. How could you not be amused by this fink model? Okay, and then maybe people would say, okay, go ahead and make one, and I'll still pay attention to your stream. Maybe, yeah. Either that, or I'll have to get another. Maybe a military model out. I don't know. I've got so many to build. I've got some Star Trek ones. some Star Trek ones are like there's a Deep Space Nine, two versions of the Enterprise, I think. They're really pretty cool models. I bought them just because I thought, well, if I were ever to build them, they're cool. But what they have is little fiber optics in them. So there's a light source, and then there's this nest of fiber optic cables that run through the inside of the model, so that the windows, like the windows on Deep Space Nine, will light up. I thought that was pretty neat, so I bought them. And now they're sitting there in their original cellophane wrap, maybe becoming expensive collectibles. One can only hope that whoever inherits all of these things will be able to resell them, maybe even at a profit. But I thought those are pretty neat. Some modelers take them really seriously. I think one of them actually came with a CD, a DVD. That's what it was. It was a DVD explaining how to build it and how to make, specific modifications to it, so it was even more authentic. Should I move it down? I can move it down a little bit. Thanks for noting that. I don't look up sometimes when I'm doing this kind of thing, and then I'm not aware of it being off camera. And then I know the camera hides my head, but the only one who ever seems to care about that is who. So what I'm doing here is, this is the deck at the bottom. Well, the deck the base of the missile tubes, the tubes that hold the ballistic missiles, rest in these wells. And there's two problems. Well, among the many problems. One problem is that when I painted the deck, I got paint into these wells, which not only makes them smaller so that the tubes don't fit, but it also would make cementing a mess, because the cement likes to grab onto plastic and not paint. So I'm just going around and clearing out the paint from around the edges here to make sure to increase the diameter slightly, but also to create a surface onto which the cement can grab. And I've got 9 out of 15 done, so it's coming along okay. A laser. Okay. Laser right in the center of this ring camera, right? Maybe right on a ring, like 3 or 4 lasers right around the diameter here of the ring camera, and they'd all focus down and show me exactly where the camera is aiming. And if the lasers were any good, it would also just burn holes in the cardboard and singe my skin. That would be another thing. I bet you would like that. Oh, that's what you want to say. You want it so that if my head gets in the camera, that I would know it, because it would burn a hole through my scalp. Oh no, the dot would disappear because I'd be blocking the laser. But I'm guessing burning a hole in my scalp is more of the thing that you are more interested in. So these tabs here present a problem because they're way bigger than the gaps in the base of the missile tubes, but making those smaller would be a lot more challenging than making the slot in the bottom bigger. So the approach I'm going to use is to make the slot in the bottom of the tubes bigger so that it fits over the tab. And the tab doesn't really serve, I mean, I could just as soon take that right off, because it's quite possible to align the tubes the way you want by just looking at them. I'm not sure that that tab does anything at all. Other than that, it limits the tubes to being oriented in one direction or the other. Which means that I have to pay attention to whether the tubes have obvious flaws on one side or the other, and then make sure that they're either in the front or the back, so that when I align them with the tabs and the base here, the side I want to show is the side that shows. Nothing about this model is as easy as it could have been. And then I don't make things any easier by, getting paint where later on I don't want it, or not getting paint on a place I do want it. Sometimes I think ahead and avoid a problem. Often than not, I just create a problem, knowing that I'm creating a problem, hoping that there's a workaround later. Like this, like scraping away this paint, at a later time. Maybe that's part of the relaxation point is, if I ever do this, certainly do it differently. So it's instructional in that way. Because look, if I do it this way, this is the kind of after work, the fix-it work, the warranty repair work, kind of, rework. That's what it's called, rework in industry. If I do it this way, then I have all this rework I need to do. But if I did it this other way, that isn't this way, then I wouldn't have that. So I'm going to do it this other way, because then it would get done and there wouldn't be all this rework. Is making quite a mess, and I have to really quite carefully clean up after this before I can use this part. You put a thin layer of paint on something, and I don't realize just how, let's say, thick it is, in a sense, just how much it changes, like the diameter of these wells, for example, or their depth even. I mean, there's a noticeable it's noticeably thick on the bottom here. And I'm hoping that this rework will make it the step of actually getting those tubes to fit into these wells and stay there, whether they're cemented in or just held in by the compression of the part above it. the location of the decks. Will work out. What I want to do is, when I start modifying the bottoms of these tubes so that they fit, so that the slots fit over the tabs, is I don't want them to be like idiosyncratic. Okay, I don't want a situation where this tube fits in this well, in maybe two others, but not the rest. It has to be kind of universal unless I somehow number them all, and that's not going to happen. I'm going to have to modify the tubes so that they could fit in any of these wells. I'm going to start by enlarging the slots, because the slots, you know, critical part. Yep. Sophisticated cleaning mechanism. Yeah. All right, so let me take one. Here is one, and you can see that there's a slot on both sides. Nice. Some of these have slots on both sides, some on one. Well, anyway, you can see the tab there is fairly large. And you can see that the slot, such as there is pretty small and shallow, and it's just not going to fit. Okay. What I don't want to do is make the slot go up too high on the tube, because there's a ridge here at the bottom, and that's supposed to be flush with the floor. Okay. And the slot is goes up to that ridge, but not beyond it. So this is a nice file. I wonder, maybe the edge of this one would work better than, yeah, this gives me a little more control, because I'm going to use the side of this as opposed to that square file. And I'm just going to file away carefully. This is my first one. This is the prototype. So I want to go up to, but not over, that ridge. Exactly. It's over. I have to hold it on my knee to give it support. But I definitely needed to go up to that ridge because these tabs are at the same level as the floor. But this doesn't go up far enough. Bottom of the tube there, the raised portion, will be above the floor level rather than at it. I don't want to go too far because then there'll be a gap. This is getting to be the right size. So if this is going to fit, at all without having to two other dimensions. One is the diameter. So do I need to file some of the plastic off all around the outside of this in order to make it fit, because the diameter is just too big? Okay, do I need to do this all around the base? And also, is the base, the part that's below the ridge, is it potentially too high meaning that I need to file it down so that there's less of it there. So we've got the diameter, we've got the height of the insert, and we've got the size of the tab. And if they're all correct, then this would fit nicely. This would fit perfectly here and look great. It doesn't, no, it's not going to fit. So even though I cleaned this up, no, our dog who is watching, there's the problem here. Yeah, I think the tab is okay. But it's not setting in there the way it should. It's going down far. And I can't tell immediately whether that's a diameter issue or a height issue. I don't think it's a tab issue anymore. But it's but what I can't tell is that whether this is not going down into the well because the diameter of the outside of the tube is greater than the diameter of the inside of the well. Whether it goes down as far as it goes and that it's too high. I think I'm dealing with a diameter issue here. I think it's just not going. I think I need to file the outside of this down more without marring the ridge on the bottom. It is saying I need to make the balls. I need to make this smaller here. If it were that it fit into the well, but that there was too much plastic, so it was not setting deep enough. Like it went in, but it wasn't deep enough. Then I could just file the base, but I don't think it's going in at all. This is going to be really tedious if I need to do this on all of them, because it has to be done pretty carefully. I mean, already as it is, and kind of going up onto the ridge on the bottom. It's not going to, you're not going to be able to see it really, but just soon not have that become a secondary issue. Other alternative, if worst came to worst, is I just file this whole thing down far enough so that it wasn't there at all, and the ridge just do that. This is kind of a prototype. Oh, hi, a new follower. Thank you. Really appreciate it. You get to watch really boring filing of plastic parts with Dyson Dungeons today, as I attempt to get these missile tubes presentable, getting rid of the seams, the glue seams, and then trying to get them to fit into the base, the deck here. Let's see if this helped. I made it smaller in diameter. Looking like I've got all three problems, you know? Looking like not only is this too big in diameter, but it's too long. It's supposed to fit like that. It's supposed to fit so that this ridge is flush with the deck. And it just isn't doing it. And again, I can't tell whether it's because the diameter is too big or because it's just I just think there's too much of it. And I think I'm going to try this. If I can get one to work, then I'll know what to do with the rest. So I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper and make it less. Just do it this way. So that there's less of a ridge on the bottom. There. But not as much of it. But if I can figure out what's wrong with one, then I can work on the others. You know, it still feels like I've got a diameter problem. It's not just to reduce the diameter because there's less plastic to work with. I know, I mean, you would be right in saying, who cares? You're not going to be able to tell anyway. You're not going to be able to see this. The pieces to fit together nicely and not just be kind of haphazard and ugly. And it's just, you know, just manufacturing laziness or something. You leave the tolerances very too tight. What have I spent, like 20 minutes trying to get one of these missile tubes to fit? I am not going to be able to take that much time on everything. Well, I mean, I can. Why not? But seriously, for a stream, this is not good use of stream time. Unless I'm able to talk about something in a monologue that's more entertaining than the stuff I've been talking about so far. This has to be close. Still not fitting. I do not. I'm having a hard time understanding the problem here. Really, it's close to working, but just putting it and holding it in place is not easy. Okay, so it's supposed to go in so that this is pretty close to where it needs to be. Okay, I wish I could hold it and rotate it at the same time, but it's proving to be quite a challenge. It feels like it's snapping in there okay, but not all the way around. So if there's too much plastic on the bottom, so it's not settling in the well, like this ridge is higher than the well, but the diameter is off. You don't want to take so much off. There isn't anything left on the bottom at all. But I think it's a height issue. This ridge is the bottom, so I can't get too low. I mean, one concern would be that these would get so low that it wouldn't match on top. That can't become an issue because this ridge on the bottom sets on the floor. But there really isn't much clearance there. This fits in there. It doesn't wiggle around. The issue I'm dealing with is really a issue. Something like that. Something like that is as good as it's going to get. Just going to be that kind of like little bit of a gap. I can tell it, and I can push it around in all directions, so I know that it's in the well and it's catching. Yeah, it needs to be filed down so that there's very, very little left. Okay, so that's like one. Basically, what I need to do is I need on each of these, I need to file down the edge. Okay, I'm discovering now what I need to do. I need to file down the diameter because the diameter is too big for the well. Then I need to carve out the slot so that it is at least as big as the tab, the base. And then I need to sand down the bottom here. This side has more plastic showing than this side, so it's not even on the bottom. Because after I do this, the slot is to sand down the bottom. Fits in those very shallow little wells. I need to get the diameter right first. And that I can tell that's right because when it goes into the well, I can push it around in all 360 degrees and it doesn't move. If it wasn't in the well, then it would slip around on the surface. Yeah. Multi-step, messy process getting these to fit into the floor, but getting them to fit into the floor is really important. Otherwise, they're all going to be different heights. They won't match up on the top, on the top deck, where they need to rest. And they won't be vertical. Almost as bad as the tubes for the periscopes and snorkels and radio antenna in the control room, which was an obvious and stupid design flaw. Could be able to just pick any one of these. They're all supposed to be the same. And I should be able to, if the diameter is right, even if the height isn't. Get these to fit. Yeah, this is going to be really unfortunate that so much effort needs to be put into just getting these things to fit into a little well. I was tempted to just take off this little flange thing, this tab thing on the bottom altogether, but then getting them lined up would be difficult. Well, okay. Got back from break, and what I managed to do in the entire time back from break is touch up one dot of paint. Literally, it was a dot of paint on something that needed touching up. And maybe got 2 of these missile tubes to fit. Handed down too much on that side altogether. It was not even. It's a disaster here. And I made it almost totally disappear. Oh, man, these things are really just as difficult. Yeah, it's almost time to quit. So I'm grumpy at this point. I'm grumpy about how this is not fitting. I sanded down too much on one side and not enough on the other. And when it gets to be grumpy time, around 2 o'clock, then it's probably time to, just stop messing with it and talk about Friday, where I'm going to go back to painting centaurs. So thanks everybody who watched today. Thanks for the follows. That is really appreciated. Thanks so much for follows. And I will be back on Friday at more or less 10 to do some relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons. And the relaxing painting will not entail dealing with this stupid submarine and these recalcitrant, very recalcitrant. This one is especially. I do not like how this is not fitting. Recalcitrant missile tubes. Yeah. I really want one more to fit. I really do. I just want to get one more in. You're supposed to just, very nicely just sort of slip into these little wells. Look really pretty there. It's just sitting there right up against the deck. Well, let's see if it fits in any other spot. Okay, that might just be as good as this one gets. There. Okay, I'm done with this. I've got 13 more of these to do. That one was messy. We'll see what happens with the rest of these next week, Wednesday. So, thanks so much for joining in. And I will be back on Friday to do some more relaxing than this anyway, and hopefully more productive painting with Dice and Dungeons as I continue my work on the Centaur models. I'll be doing the flesh color on this guy, and I'll be doing touch-up, washing, and flesh color on this one, and we'll have 2 centaurs, and after that then I'll paint the bases probably green, and we'll see how that goes. But so far I would say that this was I got some stuff done. You can hardly see it. It's been difficult getting these pieces to work, and I'll just be continuing that next week Wednesday, but Friday is centaurs. So thanks for watching, and hope that you all come back then and join in relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons then. What am I sanding? I am sanding the epoxy seam because I broke the base before. Yep, that was a thing. Leave these guys out because that's what's coming up on Friday. Thanks again. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Or evening or morning, depending on what time zone you're in. And come back again on Friday for relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. Thanks.